Na, o dabar noriu pakviesti, tiksliau visai netrukus pakviesiu kitą mūsų pranešėją, kuri Lietuvoje lankosi antrąjį kartą ir atvykusi vos prieš kelias dienas, ne tik, kad paruošė jums pranešimą, bet dar ir spėjo susitikti su 13 Lietuvos mokyklų pedagogais ir jiems pravesti, neabejoju, puikius mokymus. Jos tema, kai mokslas susitinka su realybė, tarptautinis islandiškojo prevencijos modelio įgyvendinimas su Planet Youth žingsnių programa. Tai Margrét Lilja Guðmundsdóttir, Planet Youth organizacijos prevencijos ekspertė. Labai norėčiau pakviesti ją į sceną. Mrs. Gudmundsdottir, you can come here. Galite ir dar paploti. The stage is yours.
Hi, 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 hi. Happy Friday. It's Friday. How many of you have I seen before this week? Raise your hand. Look around. Happy to see you again. I promise you that I'm not going to talk for 2 hours. And now, actually, they placed my translator in a box. Those of you who have seen me before this week have also seen that I've been followed by a Lithuanian man. My voice in Lithuania. Good luck. Flag if I'm speaking too fast. Okay, you have now already listened to Álfgeir. Álfgeir is actually my colleague and my former student. That's how old I am. I taught him at the University of Iceland, and he was a really good student, and still is, a good person. I was asked to talk about the implementation of the Planet Youth Guidance Program. And that's actually what happened in 2017, when the world started to notice that we were doing something right in Iceland. And we started a company called Planet Youth. And that's a global thing now. You see, we are bearing the Planet Youth pin really proudly. And we are now working in 19 countries. And we have more than 55 partners. And Vilniaus is one of them. And I'm super happy to be here. This is the goal of my work, to work with people that are working upstream for the children and the youth. And it happens a lot, far away from my family and my children and my grandchildren. And I actually want to share with you one thing, that my uncle yesterday finished his cancer treatment. He's 14 years old. He's been dealing with bone cancer. He's my total rock star. So I want to say, great work, Thomas, his name. Good luck on the journey. And this is for him and his friends, because he's 14. And the kids in Iceland, like already mentioned, are not dealing now with substance use. And Álfgeir showed it really well in the hero slide that we have from Iceland. They have all kinds of different challenges today. And I'm going to talk about that, among other things. Why? Why on earth am I here? Why are we doing this work around the globe? Why do we have something called the Icelandic prevention model? I think Álfgeir mentioned it quite well, that we saw a challenge. And for some reason, we figured out how to deal with it. And I'm not sure that you are all aware of it, but I've been mentioning this in all my presentations during this week. I've actually been hosting 6 workshops. I have spoken along with my translator for 12 hours in Vilnius. So if I look tired, there's a reason for it, but I can tell you I'm good tired. I know that when we see problem in the society, when we see people struggling, when we see there is something wrong, we demand prevention. But when everything is running smoothly, we don't really care. And prevention is not very hip and cool word, like I've mentioned this week. Some say it's old-fashioned. Some want to focus on other things. But when something is wrong, and we have challenges now across the globe, we demand for better prevention. And this is actually what we see around the globe now. And it has a lot to do with, of course, substance use, but also mental health. Lack of good mental health. Too much screen time. Lack of sleep. Toxic communication. Violent behavior. Even people living in 2 different silos. And I think what we are doing with the Icelandic prevention model or the Planet Youth Guidance Program that I'm going to focus on here today is that we are absolutely trying to focus on the solution instead of constantly dealing with the problem. So we want to work upstream. And the Planet Youth Guidance Program was developed based on the Icelandic prevention model. We are not saying copy Iceland and paste it in your community. Absolutely not. It's all about our partners figuring out the best way to deal with what they see in their community based on local data. It's a population-wide primary prevention methodology, so it's a structure. It's a methodology. This is not quick fix. This is not something that you can work on overnight and see a really good solution. But the 10 core steps of the Icelandic prevention model and the Planet Youth Guidance Program are quite complicated, and I'm going to talk about all 10 of them here today, as I was asked to do. When I meet our partners, and I travel a lot, and I meet them and I say, well, we are talking about the 10 core steps. I often hear this mentioned, but it says only 10 steps, but it feels more like 10,000 steps. And that's another thing. We are also talking about the step between the steps. And we have to realize that hard work is upstream prevention, or upstream prevention is hard work. So Alger had showed you the front page of all kinds of scientific papers, and I'm going to try to tell you what happens when science meets reality. When you see something published in a scientific paper and you have to start implementing it. And I know that here today we have the key people. You are the ones who are going to implement Icelandic prevention model and the Planet Youth Guidance Program in your community, in Vilniaus or in other municipalities in Lithuania. And here they are, the 10 core steps of Planet Youth Guidance Program. Looks maybe simple, but let's dive into it. I want to make it absolutely clear in the beginning that we are not saying clear your desk, bring in Planet Youth. Absolutely not. We want you to focus on what the community already knows. And we want to add knowledge and the voice of the youth. And that's really important. What are we doing with the survey, the questionnaire that many of you helped us deliver to the students in your schools? We are asking them to tell us what they are doing and how they are feeling. And that's really something that we need. We want to sharpen the focus, and we want to apply the Planet Youth Guidance Program to make local strategy stronger. So again, I want to mention that Planet Youth Guidance Program is a structure, a support system designed to assist and strengthen communities. That's the goal of it. You should always look at the Planet Youth Guidance Program as something that is supposed to support you. And its core mission is to share knowledge, disseminate the findings and expertise, and foster collaboration. So team building, teamwork is absolutely the key. And step number one, probably the most important one, is to build the coalition. And I'm looking at the coalition, and I've met the coalition this week. I met all the teachers, I met one group of parents, and at least those who attended and those who showed up are really interested in implementing it. I hope you strongly believe that you can have something to say and that your work is going to be worthy. We want to look at the communities and see what's already in place. What kind of coalition do we already have? Sometimes it's only about sharpening what we already have, and sometimes in some communities we have to create something that is not in place. And like Alger mentioned, every municipality and neighborhood in Iceland created their own team, their local team. But they had this person in charge who was leading the work. It's not saying that that person has to do everything, but she is the coordinator. We want to make sure that we are ensuring real commitment and capacity through clear roles, protected time, and collaboration. And we have to look at our coalition. And I know that this is what our team in Vilnius is doing now. Who do we have in our coalition? Who is maybe missing? What kind of skills do the people have that are in our coalition? And how are we going to reach out to those who are missing? I talked a lot about that during this week, about how we have to communicate and work together. I told jokes about the teachers who have not full inbox of really super nice emails from parents, thanking them for being the greatest teachers on earth. I also mentioned the teachers that are not maybe sending out positive message about the students every day. We are maybe more focused on dealing with the challenges and the problem that we see. So my recommendation was, of course, try to put up a smile and send out positive message and show a leading hand. What I love the most, and I run what we call the Planet Youth Academy, that's a part of Planet Youth Guidance Program. I love the most when I get emails from our partners and they ask me to enroll more people into the Planet Youth Academy. And we see a growing coalition, growing members of strong coalition across the globe. I recently came from Cape Town, South Africa, where we collected data in 124 schools. More than 49,000 learners participated in the survey. So like I've already mentioned here this week, I want you to feel like part of this world coalition. I want you to realize that what you are struggling with here in Vilnius, the challenges that you face are in many ways similar to what we have around the globe. Step number 2 is to think long term. Like Álfgeir already mentioned, this is not a quick fix or single project. We have to make sure that we have stable fundings and lasting prevention. We have to use all our resources, combine existing funds with new opportunities. So like I said, it's not about reinventing something that is regarding prevention or clear your desk. It's about maybe relocating, reusing, and thinking in a different way. We also have to make sure that we have protected time, that we are not just saying to people, do this also. Implement Planet Youth also in your community. We have to make sure that people have time and money to do it. And plan ahead, think long term, and look past 5 years with a clear long-term vision. Investing in prevention and health promotion is a big thing. And I have this dream that one day we will manage to look at prevention like a necessary infrastructure. Not only when something is broken. I want to see prevention, upstream prevention and health promotion looked at as people building buildings and public services, road system, bridge, or whatever we are dealing with. And I often see that today's debate, something that we are struggling with today and we maybe not agree on, is a prevention tomorrow. And I want to give, and I gave some of you already an explanation of this, when I was talking to the parents about screen time and social media in 2012. I'm not sure if I should say this word here, but they actually told me, not even in a nice way, just to shut up. They didn't want to listen to that. That was their own child. And I was not the person to tell them what to do or how to train their child or how to raise their child. Now they're actually asking us to help. They are asking us to support them in creating screen time rules, and they talk a lot about phone-free schools. Step number 3 is collecting data. We need the voices of the youth. We want to make sure that we are covering key areas. Substance use, absolutely, but we focus more now on, with the Planet Youth Guidance Program, on well-being in general. And that's because we see that today's challenges, and I'm going to mention that later on here in this presentation, are maybe not so much about hardcore drugs. It's more about something that happens way before they start even to think about substance. We have to make sure that we are preparing the schools together, engaging schools and parents, informing staff and supporting students. We want all of them to participate. And like Álfgeir already mentioned, we are not sampling. This is not to get sample of a cohort. We want every child to participate. We usually aim for 14 to 16-year-olds, and we want all of them to be part of the survey. So every voice matters. But we are at least aiming for 80%. When we are looking into step 4 in data collection and processing, including data-driven diagnostic, and like I said, we are focusing on the population-based survey. Schools are our hub. They are the key players in all of this. But keep in mind, dear people working in the school, that you are not responsible for the data. The data is not showing how your school is doing. The data is showing how the students in your school are doing. It's about the students. But you are one of the key players when it comes to dealing with what we see in the survey. And like I said, the focus is well-being, and we look at the risk and protective factors in family, school, peer, and leisure. And actually what we are adding now in the core questionnaire of Planet Youth is the digital space. And I know that the rockstar Ilona Kickboss is going to talk about that later here today, so I'm going to leave that to her. She is a total expert. She's actually stepping into the room now. Great to have you, Ilona. And we know that digital space is something that, you know, is affecting each and every part of the domains that we look at. The family, the peer group, the school, the leisure time. So that's probably something that you are going to see new, and I know that in the next time you collect data in Vilnius, we will have the digital determinants of health within the core questionnaire. And the purpose of the data collection is to track trends and guide local decision. We want to focus on the universal prevention. We are trying and aiming to prevent something before it starts. And today's challenges, they have a lot to do with way younger children. So instead of just focusing on the adolescents or young teens, we want to talk to the parents of the newborns. And I actually mentioned this week that my favorite group of parents are probably those who are thinking about starting a family. And I would like to ask them, so have you thought about rules regarding screen time? Way before they have children. So we see what we are dealing and maybe struggling with today is something that we have to go earlier in the childhood. Step 5, then we focus on reaching out to the community. We want their participation and engagement. Community is the key. And I know that the focus now, and like you hear, I talk a lot about the phones and the screen time use. And I know that the parents are now really, like I said, seeking out to the schools and asking them to help. And it's absolutely clear, and I think we all know it, that schools banning the phone is probably not the only solution, but we have to offer help and assistance. And similar to what Álfgeir already mentioned in his presentation, when we were dealing with a situation in Iceland regarding substance use, the community came together. It was everyone's role to act on it. It's not only the parents, not only the school, not only looking into the peer group, we have to work on this together. Collaboration drives changes. Strong coalition turn results into action. And data empowers. We are not basing what we are doing on feelings or what we think or what we see in our daily work. We are basing our work on what the youth is telling us about their life, about what they are doing and how they are feeling. Probably one of the most important and my favorite, I actually call this part of the Planet Youth Guidance Program Christmas time because I'm a big Christmas child. That's my favorite. And you can just imagine, I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at Planet Youth. I look into each and every report that we create for our partners. So I have many Christmas during the year. 124 Christmas just in Western Cape, South Africa. But it's the most important. Then you bring the voice of the youth out to the community. What are they saying? What are they telling us? But not only simple data, we are also saying, okay, what's unique about those who are doing well? And what is unique about those who are struggling? Can we understand their world? And I have also been mentioning today that last week there was a man shot dead in US. A man that I have never heard of before when that happened. The man that we know now as Charlie Kirk. And I had never heard of him before, but when I talked to my daughter who was 20 and she had heard of him. So how on earth are we going to make sure that we know what's going on in separate worlds? And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we face today. That even though we live in the same house, under the same roof, our worlds are really different. And not only regarding that person, but there are so many things going on in the world that we haven't got a clue about, just because where we are coming from or how old we are. We want the focus to be on sharing results quickly and build awareness of Planet Youth goals. And when I say Planet Youth goals, I'm talking about the goals of each and every partner. We want to use the data to spark dialogue. We want people to talk about the findings of the survey. We want them to set priorities and highlight community strength. I say that we have to make sure that the data is delivered into all the key players in the community, Sometimes we could say the silos. It's often like that, especially when we are starting working and implementing Planet Youth Guidance Program, that we hear people talk about the silos, that even people that work in the same building are not communicating between floors, let alone sometimes not even between offices. So we want to make sure that the people that live in our community are fully aware of what the youth is telling us. It could look different in your community, but we want to make sure that everyone knows what the youth is saying, and we are delivering the findings out to the people that need to act. We have to think about who is receiving the results and which part of the results. We don't bring, the reports are usually like 90, 100 pages of results, graph, and all kinds of statistics. So we have to think and focus, okay, who needs to hear about what part? And who is responsible for the distribution? That's another thing. Who's responsible for bringing the results out to the community? How are we going to do it? And what time frame do we have? And another thing that I think is probably one of the most, you hear that there is many things really important in what I have to say here today. But I think it's important when we stand in front of an audience that we don't feel like we have to know everything, that we have to have all the answers. So if we see that youth in our community is struggling, it's not that we have all the quick fixes or the solutions to it. We are listening to the community, we are listening to the youth, to the parents, to the people working with and for youth, and based on that, we create our actions. And I want to highlight, and I clearly recommend, that you go on planetyouth.org webpage. We have something there called the social wall, and it's showing what our partners are doing globally, around the world. And it's absolutely brilliant and beautiful. I know that tomorrow when we have, this conference is over, we are going to have lots of pictures from this conference. You simply place the hashtag Planet Youth and the social wall is going to grab it. But I want to recommend this because if you see something that you like, if you see some person in a youth club in Canada or in school in South Africa, it is doing something that you think is smart and brilliant, copy it. It's not that we have to invent the wheel every time. So please copy and share. You have seen this one. I actually call this Miss Trendy. I create her every year. And this is the Iceland story. I've already mentioned that this is not about copying Iceland and paste it in other communities. And what do we see? I've already mentioned we are now working in 19 countries. Planet Youth started not that many years ago as a company. So what are we seeing in other countries? Spain has been implementing Planet Youth since 2019 in Yaita and Amposta. They are collecting data among all 14 and 15-year-olds. And they also have been implementing various community-based intervention initiatives, focusing on strengthening the protective factors of parents, offering children something supportive in the leisure domain, making sure they are doing well in school, feeling safe, having a grown-up person they can reach out and talk to. And they have started to create their own hero slide. I know this is an awful graph with way too many lines, but the only thing I want you to focus on is that the trend line is going down. 3 data points, 2019, 22, and 24, and Yaita has started to show positive trend regarding substance use. Same with Amposta. We see the trend lines go down. And I think this is what it's all about. It's not about Iceland's story again and again and again, but it's important to have something that we can, kind of see our roots. That's why we started. We saw in the Icelandic data that if you don't like the situation, you can change it. And in my mind, it doesn't matter what we are dealing with. Is it substance? Is it mental health? Is it lack of sleep? Is it too much screen time? Is it that we don't have enough boys that are able to read? Doesn't matter what we are talking about. We can make difference if we work upstream and we focus on health promotion. Vilnius, since 2019, I also want to share this, and I know that my colleagues here in Vilnius are going to share what they have been doing, so I'm not going to steal their story. I just want to show you the trend line that Vilnius is creating. And this has been part of my presentation this week, focusing on that we are seeing a positive outcome. And I also want to highlight that you applaud yourself for what you're doing. I know it's tough when you get reports and you see challenges. When not everything is perfect, when you see that we are still struggling, when we have challenges, and I'm going to mention that later in my presentation. But make sure that you applaud yourself for the work you're doing when we see the data is going the right way. Franklin County has been collecting data and being part of adapting the Icelandic prevention model since 2020. They have also been using what they call the Yes card, supporting children to participate in organized activity. And they are probably the pioneers in the parental cafes, offering parents platform to come and talk about the challenges, the results from the data gathering and so on. And we see the same trend there. They are also creating their own hero slide. And it's really remarkable, and it's great to see it. For me, it's not surprising, because I absolutely believe that if we work upstream, if we focus on preventing something bad from happening, the outcome is going to be positive. I could also share with you something from Ireland, but I'm going to leave that to my colleague Emmet, that is going to speak here later today. And now I go into step 7. It's about community goal setting and other organized responses to the findings. We want the community to create their own action. We want them to create realistic 2 to 4 goals per year. Of course, we have partners that are way more, have stronger goals in mind, and some of them are creating 10 to 15 goals. But be realistic. We also want them to focus on that we have sustainability, prioritize needs, and build long-term impact. There you have to think about what is the goal. How are we going to reach the goal? Who is going to take lead on this goal, and who will support? What resources do we have to reach the goal, and what is the realistic time frame? I can tell you, I often see the first goal is just to educate and inform the parents about their role in prevention. And that's something that is an ongoing. And I can tell you a secret, this has been part of my life since late last century. And I'm saying the same thing again and again and again. I gave 6 workshops this week, but hundreds and thousands of workshops with parents in Iceland, always saying the same. Because my common sense is maybe not their common sense. And that's always how we should approach everything we do, actually. Never take for granted that people know something, even though you know it and you know it well. Step 8 and 9. Step 8 is policy and practice alignment, focusing on engaging policymakers, administrative leaders, elected official and professional to drive system change. That's tough. They need to be part of our coalition. They need to be part of and understand that they play a big role. A good example of this would be vaping in Iceland. We had the electronic cigarette, and we asked about it the first time in 2015 in Iceland. And we saw the numbers go up and up and up, and no one was doing anything. People said, at least they are not smoking cigarettes. We don't know if it's harmful, and think that's 10 years ago, so people didn't know about the situation and the impact that they were having on people in general. But finally, our policymakers, our people that were leading in charge, created new rules, visibility ban. We started to talk about it in a different way, and we saw the numbers go down. So we need them on board. We also see it now that when it comes to social media and screen time, and like already mentioned, this is something we are going to hear more about later today, we need to create policies. We need to have structure. We need to act. Step 9 is when the youth feels like we are doing something. It's like when the youth in Iceland notice that it's not the norm to go downtown and get drunk. I often take as an example how it used to be the norm that when you finished the test in 10th grade, you went downtown partying and getting drunk. That was how I did it, and the generation after me. When we started to deal with that, we actually took the students out from the classroom, and I mean we took them out from the classroom and into a bus. And we drove them out to the countryside, where they had really great time with their parents and families and teachers and staff within school. The first group that was hit like that was super unhappy. I tell you, super, super unhappy. And I was part of this physical, taking them from the classroom and into the buses. Year after, yeah, they were a bit annoyed, why are we not? I have heard stories about how it was. 3 years later, no one knew. We had changed the way it was. And that's something we need sometimes to do. I say no because I love you is probably my famous and favorite quote of all in Iceland, how the parents were empowered to say no. I've been telling jokes about the parents this week that think they are the best friends of the child. I also shared the story when I asked my daughter if she was my best friend. And like I told you this week, she just rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, Mom." Not happy. I was clearly not her best friend. So all kinds of things that we want to see in place so the kids feel that we are creating a healthy community, healthy environment. It's all about aligning policies, creating supportive environments, and then step 10, reflect and repeat. Reflect and repeat. And Icelandic prevention model, Planet Youth Guidance Program, clearly has a beginning in communities. But there is absolutely no end to it. Our children in Iceland are not perfect, far from it. They are awesome and great, but they have challenges. They are struggling and having all kinds of challenges, same as every other partner across the globe. And I think that's important. And I want to talk a little bit about today's challenges with a special focus on well-being. And we see the same thing around the globe. Doesn't matter where we are located in the 19 countries we are working. We see lack of sufficient night sleep is widespread. We see mental health concerns, especially among girls, but also among boys. Excessive social media use. And we also see this clear link between mental health, social media use, and sleep. And like already mentioned, the digital determinants of adolescents' health and well-being that are going to be talked about more briefly here later today. And for me, it's really important that you listen carefully. I know that in Vilnius, the last time we collected data, we did not have questions about sleep, social media and phones, but we are going to make sure it's going to be in the next survey. And we are going to have good quality of question with the support of Ilona and her team, making sure that we are asking the right questions. And this is a graph and a slide that I've been showing to you this week. Those are the answers from adolescents in Vilnius in 2024, all of them that participated in the survey. And it's absolutely clear that we have challenges. And like I've mentioned, and I think it's sometimes important to know that we are not the only ones struggling or dealing with something, and I think it's important that this is something we see everywhere. I want to applaud the teachers that go to class every morning, and in the classroom, only 27% of the girls and 43% of the boys are with enough sleep. I think it can be really hard to start to teach mathematics early morning if you have kids showing up without a good night's sleep. We also see the huge difference, gender difference, when we look at mental health, and we see how few girls are reporting their mental health is good. Physical health, we have a better results, but still we have the gender difference, and also close to 40% of the girls are reporting that their physical health is not good, and 30% of the boys. And then all kinds of challenges they are facing mentally. This is another graph that I created for the team in Vilnius just to show simply. This is a really simple statistic, just to show you how many of those who are sleeping 9 hours or more report their mental health very good, compared to those who sleep 6 hours or less. Only 9% of those who sleep 6 hours or less report their mental health as good, compared to 41% of those who are sleeping enough. And this is something that we need to tackle. We need to do something with. We know that we have the key 3 pillars of health: nutrition, sleep, and exercise. And it's not that long time ago that we knew how much, and we were kind of giving information about how much we need to sleep. And we know that teenagers from 14 to 17 should sleep 8 to 10 hours per night. I know that this week I've met lots of teachers and I've seen in their faces that many of them are tired. School just started, the autumn is here, we are trying to get on track after the summertime, and I know that feeling. I used to teach for, well, more than 20 years at the university, and it's great to be back, but at the same time, it takes time to get into the routine. And I want us to think about how we talk about sleep. I sleep when I'm dead is a common phrase, at least among my friends in Iceland. Another thing is sleep is for the lazy people. Work hard, sleep little, right? I see it in your face, you totally understand what I'm talking about. Another thing I mentioned, especially to the parents, is when we say to our children, if you don't behave, I will put you to bed and you go to sleep. We use it as a punishment. And maybe it's too late for those of you who have 14, 15, 16-year-olds at home, but for those of you who have toddlers or newborns or young children, try to recreate the sleeping habit at your home. Don't make it be the carrot to be allowed to stay awake, and then when you want your teenager to go to bed, they're like, no, no way. I'm finally allowed to stay awake. And we also know now so much more about sleep and importance of sleep than we did maybe only 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that's important that we make sure that we are informing and educating people about it. We know that for children and adolescents, it's hugely important for brain development. Sleep supports memory, learning, and problem solving. It's also about physical growth. Growth hormones are released during deep sleep. Emotional balance. We know that if our kids are getting enough sleep, they are less likely to have anxiety and just be irritated. And we know there is plenty of that when we are talking about teens. I actually taught the parents this week to approach their teenager as a pregnant woman. You know? And I think that those of us who have we've been pregnant, we know that sometimes we were a bit grumpy, or we needed something right away, but we would never address a pregnant woman like we sometimes do with our teens. You never, you know, we would never do it. So it's also good for you guys that have gone through that experience, that you keep that in mind when you're talking to your teenager. We also know that risk of poor sleep is school impact. We know that they are more likely to do worse if they are without a good night's sleep. Actually, I think the research is showing that without a good night's sleep, the day after in a test, 40% less likely to achieve good grade. Mental health, higher risk of depression, stress, and risk-taking behaviors. And physical health, weakened immune system, obesity risk, and slower recovery. Our Directorate of Health, actually former, now Ministry of Health in Iceland, has talked about sleep as probably the world's best medicine. But we are not treating us enough and in a good way when it comes to sleep, so we have to make sure that we are also focusing on our youth and children. I want to share with you what we've been doing in Iceland regarding sleep and actually screen time and social media. What was done in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, was that we delayed school start for adolescents. So instead of they did have to show up at 8:15, I think now it's 8:50, or some schools have 9 o'clock. And the positive outcome is shown right away. Education on importance of sleep. Actually, we created campaigns, webinars, all kinds of conferences where we're just constantly talking about sleep. Also focusing on education and research on caffeine and sleep, because we know that the new types of drug for our youth in Iceland are energy drinks packed with caffeine. And informing and educating people about social media and sleep. We have an ongoing issue now with the phone-free schools. That's a big thing now where I'm coming from. And actually we are talking now more and more about how we need to team up, how we need to bring the parents also in this team, and how we need to act on it together. I've been talking, like I mentioned, about outside our rule on social media since 2012, and finally people are echoing what I have to say. So hopefully we will create something like that, where we agree on time that we don't want our kids to be, and also the age limit. When are you supposed to be able to have social media? I would go for 87 or even 90 years old, but I think people will not agree on me to that. So let's agree on at least the age limit that is already in place. And then we have to make sure that we are building bridges between the 4 domains of IPM: the family, the peer group, the school, and leisure domain. When it comes to all of this, the new challenges that we are facing. And what do we see in the Icelandic data? This is showing symptoms of depressed mode among Icelandic adolescents and sleep trends. And I'm showing you for 2012. Then we had 62% with 8 hours or more. Then we just saw the numbers go down, not maybe drastically, but they were going the wrong way. And after we have been constantly talking about the importance of sleep, educating people, we finally see the numbers go up. Is it due to what we have been doing? I cannot promise you that. But at least it stopped going down, and we see the positive trend of sleep. Same thing with depressed mode. Finally, we saw a positive outcome among girls. Instead of constantly getting higher and higher, it went from 80% down to 15%. And also, we see a positive trend to social media use for 4 hours or more. I know this is a bit complicated, but I hope you will get a copy of my slide. So we see the girls that are spending 4 hours or more on social media are going from 33 down to 31%, and 24 down to 23% when we look at boys. Tiny numbers, but what I'm happy about is that we are not still seeing the numbers go up, up, and up. What I'm mostly worried about are the young children, because I know what we are dealing with today, every day in school, for example, and the toxic communication and often the violent behavior has a lot to do with kids are learning really young on social media. We see kids, 8, 9, 10-year-old on social media, quite active, learning things on TikTok, and that's harmful for them because they live in a separate world. So I want to highlight and focus that we are absolutely working on creating rules and guidelines, and we manage to be strong on saying no and keeping the role we have as parents and caregivers. Almost done. It's all about the Planet Youth Guidance Program. The Icelandic prevention model is all about listening, learning, and using data effectively. A big saying now across the globe is nothing about us without us. We've been using this phrase for decades, but now we are clearly using it when it comes to children and adolescents. And it is actually our role to do something. I always see it as our role as grown-ups to act on and create a healthy community for our children. So let's listen to children and those working in the field and use data to access the situation. We always have to keep in mind that we ask questions like, what do you think about the results? Is there anything you want to see differently? And how do you plan to address it? We also know that bringing data into process and policies is important, but we see it clearly, and that's something I've always seen when I'm working with data, that data often reveals what needs to be changed, but people are maybe not willing to address it and act on it immediately. And I already mentioned the vaping, the e-cigarettes, how people were not doing kind of what needed to be done, not until they had courage and probably enough scientific papers to act on it. But I think it's important because I think both teachers, staff within school, parents and caregivers see how bad it affects our children and youth if they are not with a good night's sleep, if they are too young on social media, if they are spending too many hours there, if they are unsupervised in their own digital world. So I think it's really important that we act on what we see. Thank you.